All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are unpacking a fascinating ancient legal puzzle straight from the Talmud. Now, it all comes down to a single, precise cut. But believe me, this one little detail opens up an incredible masterclass in logic, evidence, and what it even means to have a majority.
So I want you to imagine a situation where every single millimeter matters, where just one tiny little slip-up can change absolutely everything. The big question we're digging into is exactly that. When something has to be perfect, how much imperfection can the law actually put up with?
So, here's our roadmap for this whole explainer. We're going to start with the perfect cut to set the scene. Then we'll get into the original dispute, introduce a surprise witness with a new clue, break down the brilliant logical cross-examination that follows, and finally, reveal the verdict. It really is like an ancient detective story. Okay, first things first. We have to understand just how high the stakes are here. We're stepping into the world of Jewish ritual law, where precision isn't just a nice-to-have, it is everything. The practice is called shechita, and the rules are, well, they're unbelievably specific about where on an animal's neck the cut has to happen. You can think of it like a tiny, tiny target zone. Hitting that zone perfectly is the whole ballgame. And this brings us to the crime, so to speak, at the heart of our case, the mugremet. It basically means a diverted cut. This is what happens when the blade strays, even a little bit outside that approved area. So is the whole thing ruined? Is the act still valid? This is where our whole debate kicks off. All right, now that we know the problem, let's meet the main players in this argument. This is the initial head-to-head conflict over what counts as a valid cut when things don't go exactly to plan.
So in one corner, you had the opinion of the rabbis. Their position is super strict. They say 100% the entire cut has to be inside that proper zone. Any deviation, even a hair's breadth, and it's invalid. But then in the other corner, you have Rabbi Yosei, and he comes in with a totally different take, majority rule. He says, look, if the majority of the windpipe is cut in the right place, then the whole thing is valid. Now, this is so key. Rabbi Yosei isn't just making this up. He's applying a massive foundational legal principle known as rubo kakulo. It means the majority is like the whole. It's this powerful idea that if you get more than half of something right, the law can treat it as if you got the entire thing right. It's a huge concept. So you think it's just going to be these two sides duking it out, right? Nope. This is where our detective story gets a real plot twist. A new voice enters the debate, and their testimony just changes the entire game. And here he is. Our surprise witness is Rabbi Ḥanina ben Antigonus. And get this, he doesn't show up to pick a side. He's not team rabbis or team Rabbi Yosei. He's here to offer up something totally different, his own testimony about a case he actually witnessed. And what does he say? He testifies that, yes, a diverted cut is valid. Now, this doesn't fit neatly with either of the first two opinions. It creates this totally distinct third viewpoint that forces everyone to kind of step back and reconsider the whole debate from the ground up. Okay, this next part is where things get really, really cool. This is the Talmudic process at its absolute best. You have these later sages, Rav Huna and Rav Hista, and they don't just take the original dispute at face value. They work backwards, almost like forensic analysts, to figure out what specific scenario the original rabbis were even arguing about in the first place. They ask this brilliantly simple question. What kind of diverted cut were they even talking about? I mean, does it matter which part of the cut happened first? The correct part or the incorrect part? The order of operations, right? And this one question leads to two completely different theories. So first up is scenario A. Imagine the cut starts off perfectly. You get 2/3 of the windpipe cut right in the zone. The animal's life is effectively ended during this valid part. Only then does the knife stray and cut that final invalid 1/3. So good part first, bad part second. Now flip it. In scenario B, the cut begins incorrectly, outside the proper area for that first 1/3. Then the blade moves into the correct zone to finish the job on the final 2/3. The sequence is completely reversed. Bad part first, good part second. And this is just a genius, logical chess match. Check this out. Rav Huna says the original argument must have been about scenario A. He thinks everyone would just agree that scenario B is obviously invalid. But then Rav Chisda comes along and flips the whole board. He says, no, everyone would agree scenario A is valid because the majority was done correctly first. Therefore, the real argument must have been about the much trickier scenario B. They're literally reverse engineering the debate to find its logical heart. It's incredible. So after all this back and forth, after all the layers of debate and these logical acrobatics, where does the law actually land? Okay, it's time for the final ruling. The verdict comes down, and it is a total surprise. The law is decided not according to the strict rabbis, not according to Rabbi Yosei's majority rule, but in favor of the outsider. The accepted practice becomes the testimony of Rabbi Ḥanina ben Antigonus. So you have to be asking, why him? Well, it's because his testimony was seen as fundamentally independent. He wasn't just weighing in on the existing theoretical debate. He was introducing a new, standalone precedent based on a case he'd actually seen. And by disagreeing with both of the other sides, his testimony carried this unique legal weight that, in the end, proved decisive. So what can we take away from all this? First, it shows that defining the question is just as important as finding the answer, which is exactly what Rav Huna and Rav Hasda did. Second, it shows that a simple idea like majority rule can get super complicated super fast. It all depends on sequence and context. And finally, it highlights the power of an independent, evidence-based perspective to just cut right through a deadlock. And that leaves us with one final thought. This entire intricate discussion is really about the boundaries of perfection. It makes you wonder, right? In our modern world that so often settles for good enough, what is the value we actually place on absolute precision? And where do we draw that line?